Hello, my name is Toni Hargraves, and I will be presenting my thesis titled An Assessment of a Meta-Contingency Instructional Package for a Rehabilitation Day Training Classroom. Before I introduce the literature relevant to my thesis, I would like to explain my objectives for my conducted research. I wanted to extend the current research on the rehabilitative services for adults with disabilities while discovering if the concept of cultural contingencies is warranted for future experimental investigations for this population. Conceptual research on cultural contingencies demonstrates that although we learn from the study of individual contingencies, Glenn 1988, 2004, and 2010 called for the study of contingencies at a cultural level. Changes on a large scale can provide societal importance and promote cultural survival. Glenn coined the term meta-contingency in describing the relation between the behaviors of many and external consequences. Glenn also proposed that one's environment must provide the necessary social and material needs for complex cultural development. Our everyday actions result from a relationship between products produced by our individual behaviors and cultural consequences. Studying group interrelations can lead to solving societal problems and in the end promote human survival. As we continue to discuss cultural contingencies in the conceptual research, we can see that studying contingencies at a cultural level provides a wealth of variables, relationships, and new concepts for investigation because we can now study changes that could not be made on an individual level. Glenn 1988 and Harris 1984 demonstrated the importance of understanding group practices. Skinner 1953 noted that behavior practices can explain contingencies of individual behavior maintained by social groups. Humanophore et al. 2010 separated the concept of a meta-contingency into 5 main parts. These parts are cultural organizational milieu, interlocked behaviors, aggregate product, consumer practice, and group rules. All parts work together to establish patterns within a cultural community. An example of this practice would be holding a door for another individual. The consequence of one person's behavior is an antecedent for another person's behavior. Now that we've looked at the conceptual research, let's discuss some of the applied research available on cultural contingencies in the behavioral analytic field. Vichy, Andre, and Glenn 2009 demonstrated meta-contingencies on college students. These students were told that they could allocate tokens amongst themselves and that they should try to discover the rules to the game. There were 2 conditions, equal and non-equal distribution conditions. None of the students could write the exact contingencies at play, but there was a demonstration of behavior allocating in response to the contingencies. Prisoner games are also another demonstration of cultural contingencies. The choice of one individual affects more than just that individual. Or 2 expanded the concept of the prisoner game for meta-contingencies. Required 4 responses to make products in a mock organization. Individuals communicated and demonstrated interlocked behaviors at an organizational level. Smith et al. 2011 demonstrated the concept of verbal behavior on meta-contingencies. There were 3 different conditions in this study: explicit rules, no rules, and vague rules. Faster responding was demonstrated when explicit rules were available for all performers. Research within naturalistic settings provides researchers an opportunity to remain committed to behavioral analytic frameworks while still learning about complex social interrelations. Van Houten and Malafont 2004 demonstrated a macro contingency for pedestrian safety. Camden, Ludwig 2013 and Camden, Price, and Ludwig 2011 demonstrated meta-contingency feedback on nursing staff and grocery store employees. Individuals were given feedback on the stress allocated to covering peer shifts and having to stay late to cover shifts. Redmond and Agnew 1991, Redmond and Wilk 1991 demonstrated meta-contingencies within many different organizations, including organized business, mental health, and education. Mel and Glenn 2006 demonstrated the importance of interlocking operant contingencies on a number of different organizational social groups, which included terrorist groups and organized sports teams. When we think of a basketball team, we can break this into 3 different parts: the interlocking behavior contingencies of shooting, passing the ball, aggregate outcomes of winning and losing the game, and the cultural consequence of funding for the team. As we familiarize ourselves with the literature on cultural contingencies, it becomes obvious that there is a lack of research beyond that of typically developed adults. Walton Ingersoll 2013 demonstrated the lack of research available for adults with disabilities and social skills. Zakarjesk, Hamill, and Cesaro 2014 stressed the importance for the opportunity for all individuals to live and work in cultural communities. Menzel et al. 2013 investigated the role of rehabilitation services on individuals in community integration programs. Of the individuals they observed, these individuals were engaged in programs less than 50% of the time. Canella, O'Reilly, and Lanciani 2005 investigated choice and preference for adults and demonstrated variability among adults with severe to profound disabilities. These findings demonstrate the lack of research for consumer engagement activities and choice and preference for adults with disabilities. Giving adults a choice to become part of a system where the environment is manipulated to target interlocking contingencies may improve functional life. The purpose of my study was to evaluate a program that incorporated the concept of group contingencies with adults with disabilities in a day training program. I wanted to see how such a program would function at the site. I also hoped to discover a relationship between the peer cooperative interactions and the meta-contingency instructional package, really focusing on cooperative behaviors between adults with disabilities. Lastly, I wanted to look at social validity with incorporating responses from the adults with disabilities that usually are incorporated into these programs specifically. I would like to briefly explain the development process of the intervention package and its relation to cultural contingencies. The intervention targeted task productivity and proposed that participants would work day to day to come into contact with the end product of a celebration. The package was developed to demonstrate that the classroom as a group practice could produce an aggregate product through coordinated behavior. The interlocking behavior of subtasks related to the group tasks, which related to the cultural contingencies in place to reach the celebration. I also wanted to make sure the package included obtaining social importance to demonstrate preference and choice for individuals with disabilities. I conducted my experiment at an adult rehabilitation site in Southern Illinois. I targeted a day training classroom where classroom participants worked on the work floor half a day and worked in the classroom the rest of the day. This particular classroom had 8 students ranging from mild to severe developmental disabilities. There were 4 males and 4 females. Our data demonstrates 4 participants. Lou was a 70-year-old man. Tom was a 71-year-old male. Beth was a 66-year-old female, and Stella was a 32-year-old female. All individuals had worked in the classroom for at least 3 months. This program was developed to fit into the regular classroom setting. Sessions were conducted in the classroom setting outside of organized programs. All sessions were scheduled in advance to be 30 minutes in length, with one session being shortened to 15 minutes to meet the requirements of the rehabilitative services. The right-hand table provides a list of all the materials required to complete the package. The two dependent variables chosen for measurement in the study were percentage of task completion and cooperation. Percentage of task completion was defined by the permanent end product produced by individuals and was defined on subtask completion sheets. Cooperation was defined as two participants working on one subtask that physically manipulated the end product in any way. Cooperation was measured by momentary time sampling after 1-minute intervals. The independent variable in the study was a meta-contingency instructional package, which consisted of 4 main parts. The first part was interrelated subtasks that demanded on others to complete specific group tasks. Instructional choice option, praise, and a feedback bar graph that was displayed during all sessions were also parts of the instructional package. Due to the constraints of the setting, an ABA reversal design was used for analysis of the experiment. Experimenters ended on the A phase due to meeting the requirements of the rehabilitative program. The ABA design included baseline A, which was class as usual tasks, the intervention medic contingency package as condition B, and then return to baseline as condition A. After completion of all the conditions, social validity questionnaires were handed out to consumers in the classroom and staff who were familiar with the consumers. And condition A, baseline and return to baseline, was introduced before and after the intervention. This condition included individualized tasks, which were based on class as usual, praise contingent on completion of tasks, an instructional choice package, which included an option for another individualized task, a break where there would be no more tasks given during the period, or an option to help appear with their individualized task, which was defined as cooperation. Subtasks were randomly assigned to participants during the meta-contingency instructional package. These subtasks directly related to subtasks given to other individuals and were required for completion of group tasks. Group tasks were required for completion of the end product of the celebration. Praise was given contingent on meeting individualized criterions for the subtasks. The instructional choice option was given after completion of subtasks. Individuals could help another individual, they could have another individualized task, or they could have a break. A feedback bar was displayed at all times in the classroom, which displayed how much more work was needed for the end celebration and how much work had been completed at that point. The tasks given during the meta-contingency instructional package was different than the class as usual tasks because these tasks included tasks that were related to other individuals' tasks. So first there were the group tasks that defined what was required to make the end product of the celebration. These included the beanbag game, desk weight, necklace, decorations, piñata, and photo props. Now each of these group tasks was broken down into specific individualized subtasks that were given to each individual participant. These were included different things such as painting washers, cutting pictures, sanding boards, adhering fabric together, cutting fabric. At the bottom of our slide here is an example of a group task split into its individualized parts. So here we have Stella cutting fabric, then Lou would adhere the sides of the fabric, then Beth's individualized subtask would be to fill the bag with beans, and then Tom would close the bag. Now each individual had to complete their task for the whole task to be completed. These results are from our first participant, Lou. Along the x-axis is sessions, and along the y-axis is percentage. The closed circles is task completion, and the closed squares is cooperation. In our first condition, class as usual, Lou had 0% cooperation and 0% task completion. Once the intervention started, task completion increased to a magnitude of 100% and remained stable across all sessions during this condition. Cooperation was variable. He had cooperation during 2 sessions, and see on session number 4 and session number 7. Once class as usual was reintroduced, cooperation decreased to 0% and remained stable at 0%. The first session, number 9, for task completion, Lou was higher than original baseline, but dropped in magnitude from 100% to 71%. Then we can see a decreasing trend down into the 30s, and Lou remained low for the remainder of the condition. He never rose back to the magnitude. That is to for participant number 2, Tom, x-axis demonstrates sessions and the y-axis demonstrates percentage. Closed squares is cooperation and closed circles is task completion. During class as usual conditions, Tom had low levels of task completion and no cooperative behaviors. Once the intervention package was introduced, task completion increased to a high magnitude of 100%. This continued stable across 3 sessions, with the next session being our short session, which was just 15 minutes long. There was a decrease in task completion. Once sessions were continued at the normal 30-minute duration time, Tom's task completion increased back to the magnitude of 100%. Cooperative behaviors were variable during the meta-contingency package intervention. Tom displayed cooperative behaviors across 3 of these sessions. Once class as usual was reintroduced, Tom's task completion decreased to those task completion percentages demonstrated during the initial baseline, and cooperative behaviors went back to 0%. For participant number 3, Stella, along the x-axis is sessions, and along the y-axis is percentages. The closed squares show cooperation, and the closed circles show task completion percentages. During class as usual, Stella demonstrated low levels of task completion with a slight decreasing trend. There were no cooperative behaviors demonstrated during this condition. Once the meta-contingency package was introduced, Stella's task completion increased to a magnitude of 100% and remained stable along this condition. Cooperative behaviors were variable during the condition. Stella demonstrated cooperative behaviors 3 out of 4 of her intervention sessions. Once class as usual was reintroduced, Stella's task completion fluctuated but continued around the same magnitude as was demonstrated during class as usual, and at a much lower magnitude than was demonstrated during the meta-contingency package. Cooperative behaviors once again reduced to 0% during the return to class as usual condition. For participant number 4, Beth, once again, closed squares is cooperation and closed circles is task completion. Along the x-axis is sessions, along the y-axis is percentage. Beth had high percentages of task completion during all conditions. Her cooperation percentages were 0 during class as usual and return to class as usual. During the meta-contingency package, Beth demonstrated cooperative behaviors 4 out of her 5 sessions. These cooperative behaviors were demonstrated in a decreasing trend. 6 individuals out of the 8 classmates were given the opportunity to participate in the social validity questionnaire. Out of the 6 given the chance to participate, 6 responded, demonstrating 100% consumer responding. The table does demonstrate some variability in responding, but with an overall positive satisfaction towards the study, with 100% of respondees saying that they learned vocational or social skills. The meta-contingency intervention package was successfully conducted in the rehab setting. Low levels of task completion and no cooperative behaviors were observed during class as usual conditions. Task completion increased to high magnitudes for 3 out of 4 participants. There was a clear effect on task completion for 2 individuals. Cooperative behaviors were observed for all 4 participants for a minimum of 2 sessions across the meta-contingency package sessions. When given the chance to demonstrate satisfaction, 100% of consumers participated in the social validity questionnaire. Our findings were consistent with the literature that was provided, demonstrating results for typically developed populations. Interactions on a cultural level did have an effect on the targeted behaviors of task completion and cooperation. We found that there were low levels of responding and engagement during task as usual conditions, which also replicated the findings of Mansell et al. 2003, where low levels of engagement were observed when assessing adults with disabilities. Upon giving the opportunity to demonstrate variability in responding towards satisfaction of the program, we found results of variability, which also demonstrate the findings of Canala et al. 2005. Consumers really should be involved when provided the option to express preference and choice towards rehabilitation programs and services. As a basic study, this experiment is not lacking in limitations. The first limitation that I'd like to talk about is that the intervention package consisted of 4 different parts, and there is no component analysis to break down the 4 different parts separately. Although conducting the study in a naturalistic setting demonstrated great social importance, not all variables could be controlled with great strength at all times, such as the change in duration for one of the sessions to just 15 minutes to meet the requirements for the programs in place at the setting. Also, Lou was not present to contact the end product of the celebration because he was not present during the class for that day. Another limitation was the experimental analysis tactic used. It did not provide a return to the intervention, which would have increased strength for control. Once again, it was conducted in the naturalistic setting, and to meet with the requirements of the program, we were unable to return to the intervention. An ABAB design or an alternating treatment design would have demonstrated much stronger experimental control. Lastly, our experiment focused on just a single classroom, just 8 participants. Overall, it's a small portion of a much larger population for adults with disabilities. Since there is a lack of research on this population, there's a plethora of future studies, but I'll quickly talk about a few important ones. Future studies could extend on the current study and Smith et al. 2011 and address the roles of different rules, explicit, vague, and no rule conditions with adults with disabilities. Future studies could also investigate verbal behavior, measure verbal responses, and see if the verbal response of one individual acts to prompt another individual, and look for different kinds of patterns in those kind of responses. Future studies could also look at tasks presented. In the current study, we presented tasks randomly, but they could be addressed and presented based on high or low duration task performance, giving high duration tasks to low performers and low duration to high performers, and see what kind of patterns would come from those kind of situations. Future studies could also provide for more salient differentiation between conditions, maybe with colors or set rules. There could also be analyses extending over longer periods of time to look for emergence of patterns. Also look for responses and patterns for individuals who have had a history of working together before or living together before. There's also a wide variety of settings for individuals with disabilities, such as SILAs or work floors, or even community outings, where future cities could conduct experiments. Although individualized programs are used to ensue learning of vocational skills, here are some proposals to staff providing community integration services in connection to cultural contingencies. Um, Staff should embed opportunities for individuals to come in contact with social events in the vocational settings while providing consumers with a chance to provide their own preferences for programs. Providing these opportunities provides consumers the chance to learn from actual social scenarios and to learn from each other, since each individual has a different history of vocational skills. During the study, the participants built a game from low-budget materials. Future classrooms could use the same kind of programs to enrich the overall environment by using these materials to make new activities. It would be easy to incorporate these kind of programs into the classroom and promote engagement in vocational skills and promote engagement for functioning for daily living and communication skills. To conclude, I'll review implications for the findings from the current study. The package was successfully incorporated into a day training setting and increased task completion for individuals. Cooperative work opportunities provide enrichment to increase functional life and increase vocational capabilities. Staff should reassess rehabilitation programs to include a manipulation of the environment to provide opportunities for cultural contingencies. More research is needed to understand the relationships of an adult with disabilities on the behavior environment of other individuals. Future research should concentrate on increasing vocational and community integration settings for individuals with disabilities.